Before Daniel met her, he had already been through a marriage that ended in heartbreak. His first wife had suddenly abandoned him and their family, swept away by a whirlwind romance with a military officer she had met by chance in a restaurant. The betrayal cut deep, leaving Daniel convinced that love was no longer in the cards for him. But life has a way of surprising us, and one day, against all odds, he found himself falling in love again. Emily, fresh out of university, was eager to start her career but kept running into closed doors. No matter how many applications she sent out, she was met with rejection after rejection, her lack of experience and young age overshadowing her potential. It was frustrating, especially since she had put in the effort to gain practical skills through internships and summer jobs. One afternoon, after yet another failed interview, she sat on a park bench, tears slipping down her cheeks. That was when Daniel saw her. He had been strolling through the park with his daughter when he noticed the young woman, clearly distressed. Unlike the passers-by who walked past without a second glance, he couldn't just ignore her pain. He stopped, gently asking if she was all right. At first hesitant, Emily eventually opened up about her struggles. The endless cycle of interviews, the dismissive attitudes of employers, and how male hiring managers would scoff at her when she spoke confidently about her skills. As she spoke, Daniel listened intently. Then, as if sensing the weight of the moment, his daughter Sophia handed Emily a drawing she had made earlier, a sweet illustration of a cafe with her father at its heart. Emily held on to it as if it were something precious, a small but unexpected source of comfort. At the time, Daniel ran a small business, a children's development center. While he knew the role of an administrator wasn't quite the right fit for Emily, he still offered her a temporary job. With no other options, she accepted. Alone in a city far from home, struggling financially, she needed a fresh start. Daniel was drawn to her from the beginning. He started leaving small gestures, flowers on her desk, sweet treats during breaks. Eventually, he found the courage to ask her out. To his relief, she agreed. In truth, she had been intrigued by him ever since that day in the park. Their connection deepened quickly, and within 6 months, they moved in together. A year later, much to his own surprise, Daniel proposed. For a man who once thought he could never love again, trusting someone enough to build a future together was a revelation. As time passed, Sophia grew up. She was finishing school, preparing for university in the capital. She and Emily shared a strong bond, and despite not being her biological mother, Emily had become an irreplaceable figure in her life. Meanwhile, Daniel's business flourished, and Emily, who had initially sought a separate career path, realized she found more fulfillment working alongside him. Daniel, in turn, was more than happy to have such a capable and devoted partner at his side. Recently, they expanded, opening a new branch of their center. Emily stepped in as the temporary administrator, ensuring everything ran smoothly while Daniel focused on a new business venture. The responsibility of managing the clubs rested entirely on her shoulders, and she embraced the challenge, often staying late to handle evening programs for older children. One of these programs included English lessons taught by a young instructor named Nathan. At first, Emily admired Nathan purely for his professionalism. He was articulate, confident, and excellent at his job. But over time, something shifted. A different kind of awareness crept in, an unsettling attraction she had never expected. She fought against it, unwilling to entertain such thoughts. Betrayal wasn't in her nature, yet no matter how much she tried to suppress it, the flickers of temptation wouldn't fade. Worse still, she sometimes caught Nathan looking at her in a way that made her wonder if he sensed it too, and that, more than anything, unsettled her the most. He started calling her boss, in a way that felt more intimate than respectful, throwing compliments her way, asking questions about her personal life. One evening, after locking up the center together, he kissed her. For a moment, Emily forgot everything, her marriage, her responsibilities, her principles. The kiss sent fire through her veins, a mix of pleasure and guilt so intense it made her dizzy. And just like that, a boundary had been crossed. From then on, she couldn't look at Daniel the same way. She found herself comparing him to Nathan. His steady presence now felt dull, his familiar face uninspiring. Nathan, on the other hand, was vibrant, exciting, unburdened. Slowly, resentment took root. Daniel, sensing the shift but unable to understand it, watched helplessly as his once affectionate wife became distant, irritable, angry at everything and nothing. Determined to understand what was happening, Daniel found himself sitting in his office one evening, staring at his computer screen. On impulse, he accessed the security cameras at the center, knowing Emily had a late class that night. The classroom was empty. Frowning, he switched to a different feed, and then he saw it, the back room, his wife kneeling before a man half his age. The shock hit him like a physical blow. His hands clenched into fists as nausea rolled through him. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. Silently, he recorded the footage onto a flash drive. He closed his eyes, pressing his fingers against his eyelids until he saw bursts of color behind them, as if trying to force the image out of his mind. But it was burning into him now, unshakable. When he got home that night, Emily greeted him as if nothing had happened. She even kissed him on the cheek. Daniel recoiled. The memory of the security footage flashed behind his eyes, filling him with a disgust so sharp it made his skin crawl. That night he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, and by morning a plan had begun to form. A plan for revenge. Daniel carefully set the stage for what he called a celebration of their latest business expansion. He invited Emily to a restaurant, reserving a private room where an unexpected revelation awaited her. He had made a deal with the administrator, an expensive arrangement but one he had no regrets about. This wasn't just dinner, it was justice. His ultimate goal, to expose her betrayal in the most unforgettable way. Unaware of what lay ahead, Emily arrived in high spirits, talking excitedly about work, sharing updates about Sophia's university life, and reminiscing about their early days together. The evening unfolded smoothly, the ambience warm and pleasant. Then, as they toasted to new beginnings, Daniel stood up, glass in hand, and launched into a heartfelt speech. Just as he spoke his final words, the screens around the room flickered to life. The atmosphere shifted in an instant. Emily turned toward the screen, her expression morphing from blissful ignorance to sheer horror. The footage played, undeniable proof of her infidelity. The air grew thick with whispers and stolen glances. A wave of humiliation crashed over her, and in seconds, she fled the room, tears streaming down her face. What followed was a grueling divorce filled with legal battles, property disputes, and desperate attempts on her part to manipulate the situation in her favor. She pleaded, she bargained, she begged for forgiveness, but Daniel was unmoved. When the dust settled, relief washed over him. Sophia, who once admired her stepmother, saw her for who she truly was and severed all ties. And as for Nathan, the moment he caught wind of the scandal, he vanished. He cut off all contact, quit his job, and left her to pick up the pieces alone. She managed to secure a small apartment, but happiness eluded her. No matter how much she wished to undo the past, the weight of her choices followed her like a shadow. Some mistakes are irreversible.